and 39.3 must be read in context, now as they are, with the amendments as had been made. But you can't put that out of isolation of the text. Yes, my Lord.
The challenge was to 39, 2, and 3.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And that's what was before the judges to determine. You can't tell them, look, judges, you cannot deal with it because something else has come up.
The rule of interpretation of statutes and of the Constitution, as we were told yesterday, must have a contextual angle. You can't look at those two without looking at the purpose of introduction of 1A and 1 capital B. You can't look at them in isolation. You've got to look at why was this being done. You can't turn a blind eye that Parliament and a bipartisan committee of the political actors have said there's a problem here. Let's try and solve that problem by introducing this so that it now then explains 39.2 and 39.3. Otherwise, the political actors would have said, no, let's just get rid of 39.2 and 39.3. That's the short point about it, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Your submissions then say that the prayers C, D, and E are dealt with. So the what happens to prayers A and B? Because that's where the heart of the problem starts before we get to moderation.
Now, if you look at the decree at page 298 and you look at the final orders by the learned judges of the High Court, they actually are a big reflection of C, D, and E. And the two do give C, D, and E. But their final reflection was on that particular matter. My Lord, may I continue so that I keep within time? My lady, have I answered the question or have I run away from it? Okay, so that, my Lord, when the learned judges of the High Court went ahead to make declarations in regard to Section 39, the landscape had, in our submissions, already changed. Therefore, the declarations made by the High Court in relation to Section 39, 2, and 3, without reference to the amendments made by Parliament in the 2016, those declarations were at best and with respect otious. My Lord, on a different aspect, I kindly beseech this court to uphold the doctrine of vertical stare decisis. I mentioned it yesterday. The concept of stare decisis was originally a common law concept. It has now been put in the Constitution for good reason. My lords are very familiar with the case of Kibaki versus Moi, a Court of Appeal decision in relation to personal service, where they quoted extensively Lord Denny and his attempt to fight the concept of stare decisis. And my Lord, you're very well aware of the history of Lord Denny when he resigned from the House of Lords to go become the Master of Rolls, squarely out of his criticism by Lord Devlin on his attack on the concept of stare decisis. But the short point is now that is a constitutional doctrine and no longer a common law concept.
And of course you're hearing submissions at the Court of Appeal, which is continuing with its two-day marathon hearing on the presidential elections vote tallying row. And this follows a decision by ABC to falter lower court's ruling that indicated that constituency returning officers would announce and declare the presidential results. We're expecting the ruling on this matter in 2 weeks, and we'll keep following these hearings for you today. We want to take you back to Kisumu now, a developing story we're following for you, which are the ongoing protests by nurses who are on strike day 3 today. They are, of course, protesting the fact that their CBA has not been signed, among other issues. Our reporter Laura Acheng joins us now with an update. Laura, tell us how the situation is unfolding there. Laura, can you hear me? Alright, it seems you're having a challenge with Laura, and very shortly we'll return. But as you can see behind her, nurses with their banner, they say they are not going back to work. We heard from the Salaries and Remunerations Commission last evening disowning a CBA that was presented to it by the Council of Governors. Joining us now from FIDA Kenya is its Executive Director, Teresa Omondi Adetan. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. And of course, we're staying on with Joy Mudivo, who's a governance analyst, and Charles Kipkule joins us this hour. He's a political analyst. Let me begin with you, Teresa, because we haven't per se seen FIDA, speaking out on industrial action, especially in the health sector. Why does this particular strike catch your eye?
Actually, FIDA Kenya has been vocal about the strikes, the health sector strike. We spoke during the doctor strike, maybe not so vocally, but this time round, with the nurses going on strike again, we are saying it is too much now, especially because we have most of the patients who are being sent away from the hospitals are women in the maternity wards, women who are coming to deliver. They're reaching the hospital doors and they're being told you cannot come in. Some are actually being ushered out, and we're saying this is a nation that has a campaign that no woman should die trying to give life, so we're thinking we cannot have the nation again go through what we had with the doctor strike, which is just like 3 months old. And it's time for the nation to actually stop and think what is happening and what can we do about it.
Okay, when in your assessment, where is the failure? We hear SRC saying one thing, COG saying another thing, the ministry saying a third and different story. Where do you believe the breakdown in terms of negotiations is?
I just think we are not getting the right stakeholders on the table. Yesterday we tried to have a few phone calls with the people who we think are most important in these negotiations, and it was so unfortunate to learn that we'd be told that there was a CBA discussed, negotiated, but certain stakeholders are missing. Like, I'm just trying to think, for Wanjiko, does she really understand who needs to be at the table and who was not consulted, and why one person now is saying we don't think that was the right thing you negotiated and now we take it back to you? And the blame game is really getting out of way. And our first question as Federation of Women Lawyers is, who needs to be on the table and who makes the final decision, so that Kenyans stop get treated to the fact that yes, we had a negotiation, we agreed, we are fine with it, but one person is not fine with it, or one arm of the government was not consulted. So and from a legal perspective, who do you believe has the final word? Is this about what SRC has said? Is this about COG? Yeah, so at FIDA Kenya we're saying the government has the ultimate responsibility. They have a constitutional responsibility to protect Kenyans who are diligently paying for their taxes, and I think the president already showed his commitment towards the health sector, and he has the power to make that declaration now and ask the executive to take the right instructions and the right direction of this country.
All right, Charles, is that your estimation? Where does the buck stop when in the health sector, which is a devolved sector? So you have an institution, SRC, independent, saying its own thing. You have the national government with its position on advice from SRC, sometimes differing from it, and then you have the Council of Governors, who really are, in charge of this devolved function.
Well, I think in terms of the question of where does the buck stop, the buck stops with the ultimate leadership of our country, which is the presidency. The executive is the head of state and government. And when you want to look at government, it is national government and county government. So this, the continuing strike that is going on right now, I want to look at it in terms of the result of a failure of intergovernmental and interagency cooperation in terms of addressing issues that are of a common interest and concern to all of them. So the presidency and the executive should take a national lead in terms of providing leadership and very strict direction in terms of wanting to end this strike. But of course we want to look at it in terms of, again, healthcare is a devolved function, and for the past few years after the advent of devolution, we've been treated to unending circles of industrial action by workers, especially in the health sector, and this borders on a very fundamental issue in Kenya. We want to ask ourselves a question: is healthcare being essential service? Is it really right for? Is there justifiable grounds for just the withdrawal of this labor, resulting in loss of lives, and Kenyans not really having a discussion on the sanctity of life? Because these strikes have now become killers. the costs in terms of the lives lost have become too much. It is time we need to just stop as a country and say, apart from the discussion on salaries, remunerations, we want to look at first of all the sanctity of life. Is there anything that is justifiable grounds for us to cause people to die because of such action? Secondly, I think we want to look at our national values, because at the crux of this strike that we are witnessing right now is the demand for more allowances by the nurses, because they are now asking for the health allowance and they are already receiving a nursing service allowance. So we are seeing a system where, as Kenyans, we are going into service, and especially in areas which are very critical, with the motivation being financial gain and not really going there to serve Kenyans and provide a critical service. Our constitution says that the right to health is a basic right. So really we need to go back to that fundamental question and say there is a sanctity of life. We must not deny anybody access to basic health care, and especially considering that the bulk of Kenyans cannot afford private health care. So if you cripple public health care, then you have denied a majority of Kenyans their rights to health, and in that way you have also denied them the right to life.
Yeah, you know, Teresa, let me ask you this, because you've heard him, Charles, talk about the sanctity of life, and you will recall during the doctor strike when we saw doctors in court, it became another issue, you know, how crude of government, how crude of county governments, you know, to put doctors behind bars, it was uncalled for, etc. Is there a legal question here in terms of holding health workers responsible for the deaths of persons who succumb to their illnesses because they did not receive due service from public hospitals?
For sure there are legal questions to it, and it's quite a dicey question in this sense that the doctors or the nurses also have their rights, their labor rights and also rights as workers in the country, and they are protected both by the constitution and also the labor laws. And I know I've even met nurses who ask me, we have gone out of our way and we've even forgotten about the spread of HIV and AIDS. We use our bare hands to treat these women, but what do you expect me to stitch her with, for example, after delivery, or in terms of the anesthesia and all that? So they really bring out for you the situation where how they're working. On the other hand, there's also the government which is responsible for providing this favorable working condition. So as a lawyer and also as the Federation of Women Lawyers speaking for Wanjiku and the women, we are saying, okay, there are legal issues that are arising from both parties, but we know there's someone who needs to take the permanent responsibility to ensure that both sides, the issues have been addressed. I know nurses will be looking at FIDA and saying, we are women also, we need to be represented by your organization. But we are here saying, in as much as you have a legal right, and in as much as the government has a legal responsibility to provide for you, we need to speak for the Wanjiku, because they also have their rights that no one is speaking on their behalf.
Would FIDA go to court on behalf of patients who are suffering?
Actually, yesterday we gave out a statement outrightly saying we are going to actively consider the possibility of going to court, raising the constitutional responsibility of the government, and also calling upon the responsibility by healthcare workers in terms of response. Could it be that we are just having weak negotiations, we are not having the right people on the table, and when it fails then we cause the mwananchi to suffer, or what are we not getting right? So we are considering going to court this time round. We will not sit back and just watch as we did last time.
And what sort of orders specifically would you be seeking? Would you be suing government for inaction, suing health workers for being out of their stations, or would it be more an interpretation of roles? Will actually be more of interpretation of the roles and the rights, because like I rightfully said, the health workers also have their rights that they will, I'm sure, rightfully defend, but we actually be looking at the responsibility and also distribution of resources. What's bringing us to this situation? And one thing I'll just add is that we know there are also processes of mediation where they can actually come to a middle point, but more so we'll actually be asking the courts then to oversee this process and give it a time limit. Okay. Yes. Laura Cheng, I believe can join us now. She's live for us in Kisumu and is following the ongoing nurses strike. Laura.
Where do you head, Governor?
Okay, Laura, can you hear us?
Yes, and Kigusa, thank you very much. We are in Kisumu here at the Jomo Kenyatta Sports Ground, where nurses have come out in solidarity with the nationwide counterparts to join in the strike. And now if they can talk to some of the officials here to give us their opinion on this entire thing. Hello, nurses. This is Anna Witi talking from Kisumu County. What we are saying in Kisumu, no CBA signing, no work.
Yes.
Because the government cannot take us in circles.
Yes.
We started negotiating in January.
Yes.
And this is June, way back from March.
Yes.
Enough is enough.
Yes.
They signed the CBA and we go back to work.
Yes.
Yeah, we cannot deal with the government that is not interested in the citizens.
Yes.
They only, if it was a matter of salary increment for the MPs, I know it could have been long gone.
Yes.
And we are not going to relent.
Yes.
We shall stay out even if it means staying 200 days.
Yes.
We do not want to know.
Yes.
All we want is the CBA signed.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Charlotte Baraza. I'm the treasurer, Nurses Union Kisumu branch. What we are saying as nurses from Kisumu, let the COG and the SRC stop blame games. Can we have our CBA and go and attend to our clients and patients are suffering? We don't want our patients and even our relatives also are there to die because of the government which is silent about the nurses issue. Nurses issue has not started now. It started long time ago. We are a unique gather and we must be respected. They have to pay us amounting to the work that we work, and even the workload and the risk we take with the patients, the conditions they suffer from. Let government talk now.
I'm Flora Mbani, the chairperson for Kenya National Union of Nurses Kisumu branch. I'm telling everybody, no CBA signed, no work. No CBA signed, no work. No CBA, no work.
Yes, and that is the situation here at the Jomo Kenyatta Sports Ground. The officers are empty, and of course now the nurses are in solidarity with their counterparts. They're taking it to the streets. Back to you, Anne.
Thanks very much, Laura, for reporting for us. Joy, let me come to you. You know, sometimes this industrial action, especially when it touches on the health workers, you know, really is a very emotive subject to the extent that you wonder about the hands in which the sick, the suffering are in, yet at the same time respecting that these health workers equally have rights, and even the premise on which if you like doctors to begin with went on strike was saying, look, the conditions in these hospitals are deplorable, etc. But be that as it may, to what extent do you believe the prolonged and very peculiar perhaps doctor strike is having an impact on what we are seeing with nurses, and could that affect the longevity of this particular industrial action?
If you remember the time when we had the doctors' strike, there's a time that the nurses had joined in.
Yes.
But the Council of Governors and the other stakeholders managed to convince the nurses' union to call off their strike and offer some basic care to Kenyans while they were negotiating with the doctors. Now, the nurses obliged and went back to work under very difficult circumstances and carried on doing work that they really ought not have been doing, because remember even that time there was criticism of wrong prescriptions and such things, because the nurses were doing work that was not really theirs. They were handling nursing as well as trying to be doctors. Now in the hour of need they came to the rescue of the Council of Governors, and now that the nurses are saying, look, at that time you told us you were going to honor a certain deal, then now they come and jump the deal. It's what we're discussing in the previous segment, and who's going to hold leaders to account for the words that they utter? When they want something done, they make promises, and then when the rubber meets the road, they renege on the promises. The unfortunate thing is that the person who bears the brunt in all this is the common Mwananchi. I like what Charles said earlier. It is a matter of, this is the sanctity of life. It's not just health, because if you're not healthy, you are not going to work, you'll not get money to eat, you'll not be able to have a life. And one of the things that we need to remember also, and I remember you had a panel here on opinion court, and Honorable Ken Okoth was on air and he said, look, the Jubilee government has done excellent in the macros economics of this country. You can see the SGR, and you can see all the infrastructure and development, and the high profile. Our president is in the G7, he's invested in the G22. On that score, they've done really well. But when it comes to bread and butter issues of Mwananchi, this government has scored very low. And the problem is, when you're coming especially to an electioneering period, that is when people really think back and look at what has it translated to me. What does it mean to me? Because there are people in this country, and remember, who are living on 1 meal a day.
Right.
There are people who, if that health clinic is not open, if their child starts coughing at night, they don't have AAR to go and just swipe a card and get it sorted out. So in this situation, I agree with what Teresa is saying, and I agree with what Charles is saying. The right people need to come to the table, and it needs to be ended conclusively. It's not for grandstanding or for anything. It's just a matter of let's end this and end it conclusively. But let me tie it in also with, again, what we were discussing earlier. You see people clamoring and coming up in arms like this, and one thing you always hear is, if this was the politicians, this would have been sorted like yesterday. Our leaders demonstrated the fact that they were led by the pocket. Leadership in Kenya has become lucrative business. You get elected in office, you know you have left poverty behind. And that thing has shown people, oh, there is money to pay those who matter in this society. So all these strikes is people trying to show government, look, we also matter. Look, we are also a priority. That's why the teachers are up in arms, the nurses. There's a time even the armed forces were talking about the police service. People are with grumblings of go-slows because they are critical sectors in this society that have been left behind, and they now are stepping up to claim their right. So government should just deal with this once and for all, and let the Kenyans receive what is duly theirs. All right, Teresa, I suppose we'll be following up with yourselves once FIDA proper is in court. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to chat with you this morning, but thank you for coming in, Teresa Mondi Aditan, who is the FIDA Kenya Executive Director. All right, we believe President Uhuru Kenyatta should be heading for Nyamira very shortly. Soon as we have live pictures of that, we're going to show it for you. Brian, of course, is joining us very shortly with the social media trends. But first, let's return to the Court of Appeal, where, of course, it's expediting hearings in as far as the vote tallying row. Listen in.
Partly, and stated that the final results referred to in section 39(1)(b) refer to the presidential election. I will take a moment. I know I have run out of time, but I will take a moment and just read that section completely. It says this: the Commission shall appoint county returning officers to be responsible for tallying, announcement, and declaration in the prescribed form of final results from constituencies in the county for the purposes of the election of the county governor, senator, county women's representative to the National Assembly, and those three positions. The declaration in respect of the office of president, the position of president, is dealt with in 39(1)(c). 39(1)(b) does not apply to the presidential election. Lastly, my notes. The only meaning I must oblige, and I urge your lordships to allow the appeal.
The Court of Appeal sitting at the Milimani Law Court, hearing that all-important case on the vote tallying row. We'll be following that story for you. We're just coming up to the top of the hour on Citizen Extra. Brian Okoth from our social media desk.